Kia ora tātou, te tuatahi na mai ki nā tangata whenua nei, nā iwi nei o te tauhu, o te waka kura haupō, rangi tānei, Ngāti Kuia, Ngāti Apakita rātua. Hoi anō, huriaki nei ki a tātou katoa i tēnei wā, ki a whawhai ake i nei tēnei kupapa, tēnā nako te katoa. Kia ora tātou, ko Guy Royal toko ingo, Ngāti Raukawa i te au ki te tonga, no hauraki, no Ngā Pui Hoki, e mihi ati ki a te katoa. Kia ora, my name is Guy Royal. I'm going to do quick introductions like we do in the Māori world, across the panel here, and then we'll launch into our presentation. So kia ora, my name is Guy. Kia ora, mai.
Kia ora e te whānau. I'm going to do mine in Māori English, so it's easier to follow. Sometimes we can talk really fast through Māori, and then you kind of get lost in the translation. So, ko Taranaki te maunga. Taranaki is my mountain. Ko Tokomaru te waka. Tokomaru is the waka that my ancestors came to New Zealand on. Ko te whanganui atara te moana. Wellington Harbour is my ocean. Ko Waifatu te marae. Waifatu is my marae in Lower Hutt. Ko Te Atiawa te whanganui atara te iwi. Te Atiawa is my iwi in Wellington City, which originally we hail from Taranaki. He kaimahi Pākehī Māori ki te taurapa tūhono. I work as the Māori Investment Manager in NZTE, New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to you all.
I'm Māori, so I thought I'd give mine in English. But there's a bit of there's a reason behind this as well. So on my father's side, I'm from Ngāti Maniapoto, which is in the King Country, Colin Meads Country. And on my mother's side, I'm from Te Aroa. And there's a number of tribes under my mother's side, too many to mention. And I have a smidgen of Polish, Jew and Scottish in me. But the reason we do this, it's about connecting with place. So when we meet people, we don't ask, what's your name? We ask, where are you from? And people say, well, Mahina will tell me she's from Te Atiawa. And then I'll try and connect with people I know from Te Atiawa. It's either through people, or maybe it's an event from the past. It could have been a battle that happened 150 years ago. And we conciliated by intermarriage. It's another way for stealthy taking over another tribe. But that's why we do that. It's more about connecting with place and time. So most Māori, when you meet with them, they won't say, what's your name? They'll say, where are you from? So those are my tribal affiliations, and I'm the Chief Executive of Potama Trust. We're a charitable trust, self-funded. We're in our 31st year of operation. And we work pretty much solely in the Māori business environment across all sectors and all levels of business, from micro, small business to your larger tribal organisations. Thanks.
Kia ora. So, a couple of things, guys. We're going to I've got a real quick presentation. This is the 101 on the Māori economy. We're going to go real fast because actually the better opportunity here is to have a bunch of discussions and conversations and questions from you guys. You've got an expert panel here from these guys, and we can just have a quick conversation around it and what are the potential opportunities going forward for New Zealand. So if you're from out of country, apologies, this is going to go real fast because a lot of the people have already seen this stuff. We're going to go real fast. If you've got any really deeper questions, come and see us after the session. And apologies, I've got this, and I've set it up here, and you guys are right in front of us, so you might get a bit blocked. Hey, just really quickly, you push next. Here we go. I work for a group called Tuya Group. We're an advisory firm. We specialise in the space. I'm a commercial lawyer by training. Been doing it for a number of years now. I've done it overseas, private equity. And then I sit on a bunch of boards in KiwiRail. And just a quick plug for KiwiRail. The train Scenics opening up this month. If you get on it, it's open up again from Picton down to Christchurch. Please get on it and then go on the Transalpine, one of the greatest railway journeys around the world. There's my plug. Right, next one. And I just realised I wore a shirt which just shows how much I sweat, how clever I am before going to a conference. Okay, next one. Also, we have an arm. So we're an advisory firm, but we have an arm. We invest into a couple of groups. We actively work with them. Some of them you might have seen. They run from everything from a chatbot through to this is a gold and cobalt mining company, which we plan to list on the ASX hopefully sometime early next year. If anyone from any angels from Wellington, they might recognise this and may have invested into it. Okay, and there's a bunch of other things. The first question is, who is Māori? So one of the quick conversations where everyone goes, oh, we're Māori, and of course there's an assumption there's this one homogenous group. Here's a quick map. So the first kind of things is, when you put in Māori, there's a kind of key aspects that I talk about. So of course, there's a bunch of individuals, and in the kind of the investment kind of space, there's a bunch of people who operate businesses or invest in. And I've shamelessly put our organisation up there, and there's a couple of companies up there who people have been doing stuff as an example. But there's lots of people in the space, and includes Steve Saunders and a whole bunch of other people wandering around in that space. Then there's the kind of landowner groups that a lot of people know about, and we'll have a quick few slides on these. And these are the big, large, or small groups that are around the country who primarily have land as an asset. And they've been sitting on that, and they often share, like I do. I sit on my family's land trust, and I share it with an intimate group of about 1,000 people. Then we have what we call iwi, which is for those from out of New Zealand. If you live in New Zealand and you don't know the word iwi, then I suspect you need to get back to the secondaries, back to school, because everything's changed now and they all teach around these sort of things. Iwi is tribe. And here there's some groups here. There's Waikato Tainui, there's Ngāi Tahu, and we'll talk about these, and a bunch of others, right? These are the tribes. These have taken prominence in recent times because they're the longest existing societal group in New Zealand, and some of them, 800,000 years old plus. But in recent times, treaty settlements have created new vigour inside these organisations and have placed assets with them that allows them to have more prominence, both publicly and, of course, with their membership as well. And then there are organisations that are pan-tribal, so that's tribes going across, working together, and often these are collective groups working. This one's a fisheries one. Moana is quite well known. That's another fisheries one. If that's a Federation of Māori Authorities, that's the collection of these landowner groups. And then there's other various ones. This is another fisheries one. The tribal ones, of course, they tend to go by kind of asset class, and often in the case, what the kind of primary asset they're holding. And then, of course, when you have other, that's everything from Richard's group Potama, which, as you pointed out, supports entrepreneurial Māori groups, through to that's Te Wānanga Aotearoa, that's a large tertiary education institution, and that's the Whānau Waipareta. That's a collective group based in West Auckland, John Tamahire's group, and supports the local community there. So it's a huge kind of ecosystem of organisations when everyone just calls them Māori. I'm going to quickly place a couple of more kind of more well-known groups. Wakatua Corporation, they're based out of far away in Nelson. They've got a couple of brands that are relatively well known for anyone's in the food and produce space in New Zealand. Very capable organisation. So they're a land owning organisation with some shareholders, mainly kind of tribally based shareholders, but they all hold some shares. They come from about two or three tribes. Four tribes, thank you. And very good succession planning. So they're, from a diversity perspective, their CEO and the CEO is female, and the head of their food privilege business, Kono, is female as well. Ratu Telele, he's very well known, won a number of awards. And of course, moves significantly into value add from their land assets. Also, key thing, 500-year plan. Common factor amongst these organisations, right? When they put these plans up, they really kind of mean them. Of course, a 500-year plan is more of an aspirational plan. There won't be a whole lot of strategic risk worked through for 500 years. Another group, some of you might well know, these are all very well known, right? So Tuaropaki is based up in Taupo, a region, geothermal. Got the power station there, Mokai. There's also, off the back of that, a collective business called Miraka, and you all know that, milk processing, using the energy from the geothermal plant, and of course horticultural greenhouse and a whole bunch of other stuff. Just to show that it's not just about primary assets and primary land assets, there are of course a number of groups who are doing different stuff, and some of you will know Maru Niho from Media Interactive and Gaming. By the way, I understand she might be capital raising at the moment. She's asked Mahina to help her out. So there's people kind of trying to move into obviously into the tech space and doing other things. And of course, he's quite a famous character. He's been doing it for a while. Recently invested into by an iwi group. Māori economy. Just real quick, basic numbers. Economists love this stuff. I don't really get the import of this because it's not value that you can realise quickly on a table and do anything with. Roughly $50 billion. It's grown significantly, which is kind of the key component out of this. And there's kind of an expectation to be about a $2 billion worth of investment over the next 5 to 10 years into the New Zealand economy out of it. That's direct investment. And then if you break down kind of the asset base, it's kind of what you expect. A lot of it in property, some of it in manufacturing, and a good chunk in agriculture. Opportunity for investment. So all I want to do is a real quick snapshot. That's all it is. I know you've got plenty of questions around this, but the very quick snapshot, because we want to jump into the next thing. So from an angel perspective, we're looking, you run around the scope around investment. There's a kind of a bunch of groups who are investing into businesses at the moment. And to a lot of people here, these are kind of invisible, these organisations. Not to all of you. Andy's here, Andy West is here, there's a bunch of others here who are involved in these groups and participate on a regular basis. But if you can see, there's right down the kind of small C stuff, there's a bunch of individual groups, I've put us in there, that's Wayne Mulligan and Paul and other guys. And there's another group in there, Ko'o, and they're kind of investors, kind of / advisor investors. And then there's the landowner groups who are investing in, and there's just a few of them. There's some collectivised models, Middle, which is the Berry, Steve Saunders' Berry, collectivised, been in the papers quite a bit. This is, of course, Muraka's here. This is a collection of getting fishing quota and power and all sorts of other type of shellfish quota into and getting extra value out of it. A recent development was the Tupuia Tapapa Fund, which was the kind of a fund that the super fund helped put together, getting Māori to collectivise some of their investment. It's about 110 million. The idea is they're kind of looking at infrastructure. I'm not quite clear. I was talking to Colin before. We're not quite clear exactly where the direction's going to go. But there's a kind of fund that sits a bit further down the scene. And then there's a kind of the new cats in the room around investment is the investment boards, the iwi commercial investment boards. So this is the commercial arm of an iwi group, a tribal group who's received some settlement assets. And then the parent says to the commercial arm, normally with some pretty capable people sitting on their board, take our money or our assets and go and build a return for us. And that spectrum's pretty big. Naito, who just announced, I don't know if you saw it, just announced the last few days, they're now 1.65 billion. They made about 150 million, which will go directly back to their members. And they're kind of a large institution that here in the South Island, particularly a bit further south, you see them everywhere, and they're involved in plenty. And then there's I grabbed one here right from here. Their headquarters are not far from here. This is Ngāti Apakita Rātoa. They're about $60 million iwi group. Just a quick plug for them. So they've invested, like a lot of these groups, they're told they've got to produce a return for their people. So a lot of them tend to move into funds management, some direct via Rangatira and Pioneer Capital and those type of funds, but don't tend to do a lot of their own direct investment. A lot of these groups don't. Some do, but not a lot. They've been directed by their parent to spend 10 million in local opportunities. And we'll talk, I've got a slide next around this, but this is about expressing to their own members how they're contributing directly into the local community. Mike Pōhio, the former CEO of Waikato Tainui, after they announced a pretty decent return on their assets, they're about a $1.5 billion organisation, he said to me one time that they announced and everyone went, yeah, good, thanks. And his view was, maybe we should go and buy a health centre, even though it probably won't meet our hurdle, because at least it's visible and people walk past it and go, look, that's ours. So kind of the same sentiments driving them. So by the way, I'm supposed to put together a strategy for them around how to spend that 10 million and how they're going to do it. If you've got any ideas, particularly local angels, please come and see me. I need to put a strategy together. get out of this stuff. Last thing, I just want to talk about investment characteristics of those particular groups, right? So they're long-term and they're expected to, you think about it, right? They're given some assets, it's supposed to be multi-generational. You don't lose it. Number one, don't blow it. To be fair, there's going to be 100 of these groups at the end of the process. We're at 67 already. It's going to be roughly 100. Only one, possibly two, have really fundamentally gone under and had really struggled. Most, even the ones who've kind of were visible, Waikato Tainu, for those New Zealanders who remember them back at about 15 years ago when they got in their troubles and buying the Warriors and things like that, they've turned themselves around completely, right? So the reality is the way they're structured, and Andy might have a comment on this, but the way they're structured is, you have to do a pretty bloody bad job to lose the stuff, right? Most of them have got pretty good, solid SIPOs put in place to produce a good, solid return in the yield. Okay, but they do want to tie in with their parent strategy, right? What's the point? They need to tie this in. This is developing an idea. This is still ongoing. They're still trying to figure out what does that mean? What is our parent strategy? Sometimes they're not even quite sure themselves. Jobs is always often placed on the table. They love to get jobs, particularly for the ones who are based regionally. Well, they're all regional. Strategic position. How can we look more important in our region? And do we have a footprint? Something that we can hold on to? Is a connection to it for our members? We've got to allocate risk, but I do want to talk about that last bullet point over there, which is yield. And it's one point you just can't get away with most Māori groups. And whether it's a landowner group, their shareholders want some money coming back, like most shareholders. Or if it's an iwi group, they want to run a whole lot of programs for their members, right? So they want to run some health programs, education programs, a whole lot of other stuff, housing. And so they will say to their investment arm, we need X amount every year to run ourselves. Make sure that's coming through your blended portfolio, right? But where's the opportunity. That although you've got to produce a yield, it only has to be across the whole portfolio, right? So a component of it could be put forward to risk. Anyway, that's the kind of really the snapshot that was going to be really the little intro to allow us to have a bunch of conversations and questions around it. Now, I've got these guys over here, and they've been dabbling in this space for quite a bit, and so I'm going to just quickly ask them. Got a couple of questions. So the first question, perhaps to you, Mahina, is Angels Association Diversity, that's the theme. Why isn't there any real Māori involvement in this space?
Good question. Maybe I can pose it back to you guys in the way of, in all your Angel Association groupings, have you been pitched to from a Māori company? Yes? Maybe? There doesn't, maybe one or two?
Well, it's really interesting. I consider them American and you might not. And
Right.
You might not be aware of this, that one centre that Liliana is Maori. There are how many people know that? How many people know one centre? Yeah.
And Aaron Ward, CEO of AANZ is Maori as well, so
Yeah.
quite a few room.
Yep.
And maybe it might be a wee bit interesting definitionally as well.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing is in my role at NZTE, I get exposed to the full pipe of Māori companies, and they're all in this angel stage, majority, looking for between 200,000 to the biggest one would be looking for 15 million. But there's a lot in this 200,000 to 2 million ask, and for them, if I say, why don't you go and pitch to Angel HQ, it's a firm and fast no. For them, it's a Māori word that we use, whakamā, which is it's very difficult to go into an environment where you know no one, which is unknown to you, and to pitch an idea and to have that scrutinised. So for them, it's an environment they're so far removed from that it causes them so much anxiety that it's not even an option. So they would prefer to go to one of the iwi groups who they can already know and trust and know the Māori values and to pitch to them. But that's something we can talk about down the line, and there's some things happening that we're trying to change that cycle and to support them to engage with more of the angel network so that you guys can also see the Māori deal flow and they also get an option to pitch.
So what can we do to help fix that problem?
Network.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to pitch first. they could always send their stuff out and gather a crew and then have a meeting and then get a group surrounding the theme pitch.
Yeah.
Or a mentor from within the area.
Yeah. Yes. That's a perfect option. And the Corkity is perfect, and that was there's only been one Corkity yet, and through that we've seen some phenomenal companies come out of that, and the hope is that program will continue. But this seems to be the first kind of year that we've seen these Māori focus accelerators really start to kick off, and then they now need a runway from moving from the accelerators to then what's next for them.
So it's the maturity of the space, right? So you're getting people who just coming up with ideas. And to be fair, the ecosystem you guys play in wasn't built overnight. It took us a while. And so now we have to kind of replicate it a bit quicker, accelerate it. And I think we've seen the start of it with the Māori accelerators, delivered programs coming out of agencies like NZTE. I suspect if we came back here in another 10 years, my gut feeling is be a bunch more Māori angels sitting in here. And because the reality is people will start talking about the deal flows, and then connections would have happened, networks would have happened, and suddenly, why don't you come and join us and we're having our association meeting.
I think there's worth having a conversation around values, because there could be a perception of some sort of delta there, but there's much more alignment on purpose, a longer term view of value creation. So there's probably a great conversation to have, which brings the perspective on values much closer together than perhaps might initially be perceived.
Yeah.
I think that's possibly at the heart of it.
Yeah, and currently a lot of the deals that we see in Māoridom, they happen behind closed doors. And then they feel that a lot of these deals happen behind closed doors. So we're trying to open both doors to bring them into the same room, which then is better for everyone. But I wonder if Rich, because Richard gets full exposure as well to a lot of up-and-coming Māori companies, and when they've come to Potama, where do they usually go then for their next round?
Probably the best way I can demonstrate this is through a bit of a story. There's a lot of stuff that happens under the radar, and that's the space that we play in. It's sort of not intentional, it's just the way we roll. Keeping things, building things up, and I'm in the position with my organisation where I'm both a founder and an investor, so decisions get made really quick. But this story it started 5 years, 2012, in a dimly lit bar in Queenstown, where I met up with some other Māori people, and we started throwing ideas around, and we focused on the Eastern Bay of Plenty. And do any of you know a little town called Kawerau? Yeah. Kawerau is, I think it's New Zealand's largest geothermal field under it, and there's some timber mills there that are powered by geothermal resource. So we were throwing around ideas which got more and more creative as we drank more beer. And from that, we thought, well, why don't we do what Miraka done? Why don't we build a geothermal milk processing plant in Kawerau? And we said, yep, that's good. So I went back to that area and talked to some of the local land trusts, and I said, what do you think about this idea? And people said, yes, let's have a look at it. And as it went on, initially we were thinking, well, most of these milk processing plants are 8-tonne dryer and they require 50,000 cows. But as we got into it, we said, well, we don't need to go that big. We can do a 1-tonne dryer, 8,000 cows. And why don't we have a portion of those cows that are organic? So we have organic and conventional milk. And then we thought, well, why don't we chuck in some dairy sheep and dairy goats as well? So that's the next phase of it. And so we played around. We brought a group together. We did the pre-feasibility, we did the feasibility, we did the business case, and people put in bits and pieces of capital as we went along. We were just drawing down, give us 10 grand, and people front up with the 10 grand, or you need to put in another 10 grand. So I think eventually we ended up with 11 groups that put 45,000 in to do all that sort of, stacking the business case work up. And then it came to, we had to raise the capital amongst those 11 groups, and we said we'll set it at a minimum of $250,000 to come into that, and everyone said yes, that's fine. And we started, everyone was kind of holding back and saying, well, who's going to go first? So we thought, oh well, we chucked in $5 million, and once we did that, the money just flowed in, and within no time we raised $20 million from within this group. But the dynamics were really neat within the group, because one of the trusts that was going to be supplying us with milk, they came and said, well, yeah, we got badly hit by floods last year and we can't put up 250,000. And you're thinking, well, we can't really kick them out. They've come on this journey with us this whole time. And so we talked around the table, and this is where your sort of group dynamics come in. We got to know each other over a period of 3 years pretty well. And we said, well, you can stay in. Your contribution is 45,000, so they were the smallest investor. So we raised 20 million, but we needed another 10 or 11, and the banks were happy to give that to us. But Māori are very risk averse and conservative as well, and so some in the group were edgy on that. They didn't want to go out and borrow that much money, so we had to go and look for an investor, and through New Zealand Trade and Enterprises Better by Capital group, we started to do that, and the Better by Capital team got involved, and I'm quite a novice at investing, and they started talking about term sheets and short form information memorandums, and I was a bit like the guy this morning, had to Google SAS. I'd Google what does term sheet mean, and so I was learning pretty fast, but they put it out there into offshore, and within no time we had four potential investors, all from Asia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, South Korea and Japan. And when we went through them, we settled on the one from Japan because they already had a footprint in New Zealand through Sedenko Foods. This is a Japanese company called Imanaka. But we started to delve into it because we looked at, are our values aligned? And when we started looking at Imanaka, they aligned pretty well, because Imanaka is a 140-year-old family company run by two brothers. So they're long-term thinking, they're intergenerational thinking, and that resonated pretty well with our investor group. And quite quickly they came on board and put up 10 million. So we raised the 31 million, or 30 million, quite quickly, much to my surprise. I thought it was going to be a really long, involved process, but it happened within about a month. We raised that much. So we're building the plant at the moment, but as we've been building it, we've got this investor group who have really stepped outside of their conservative sort of investment horizon. So I've been able to go to them now and say, well, yeah, we maybe look at dairy sheep and dairy goat milk. Why don't we look at a plant-based milk? And so we looked at oats, and we've settled on hemp. But we don't have no one's growing hemp. So from that group, we formed a hemp group. And within no time, we had 28 businesses come into the hemp group, and everyone's chucking in 10 grand. So we got about 280,000 as a kickstart fund to start developing New Zealand's hemp sector. And from that, it just shows that once you get this group confident in what you're doing, they start to step out of what they're normally known, which is property or farms, into other areas. So from that, we're now saying, well, the geothermal resources here, why don't we set up glass houses for medicinal cannabis? And why don't we look at hemp cellulose? So wouldn't it be great if we were putting hemp milk into a biodegradable, compostable hemp bottle? So it's just a matter how things evolved with this group, and there's a lot of this goes on under the radar. No one realises. I guess in a sense we are doing we're a bunch of angels come together. We don't call ourselves angels. We more call it collaborative investment, where people come together. We've been able to do that because we're well networked right throughout the country. We know lots of different groups. We don't necessarily work with the bigger ones, but there's all these smaller Māori organisations where there's a lot of cash sloshing around, and we're unlocking that cash and coming up with ideas to pitch to them to see if they want to invest. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of what's going on in this Māori economy, where you hear a lot about larger tribal organisations, but you've got all these other ones just going about doing different things.
So there was a good question around, inherently conservative. And so if you look at the makeup of a lot of the boards, they tend to be older. We don't tend to, I was just talking to Mahina about this and she confirmed it, we don't actually, from a diversity perspective, and I run Institute of Directors courses for a lot of Māori organisations and do the governance stuff, and the makeup from a gender perspective is at least 50%, and it's starting to probably sway more into the female. But they do still tend to be a bit older. And of course, because they're regionally kind of structured groups like that, they tend to be focusing on the stuff that's right in front of them. So propositions like what Richard's trying to put forward is it still has to come from a base that's close. So you talk about a geothermal field, and then you go the next step, and then the next step, and the next step. Going from there directly to we're going to go invest into some AI technology, or we quite like the idea of whatever. That's quite a significant jump for most Māori investment groups, or those with capital. And of course, the investment side, unless you're a iwi group structured, your investment sits also with the ones just managing the asset, and so they just have to figure out what they're going to do with their profit. And so they're not specifically structured as investors themselves. Any other comments? Do you want to make any comments?
When you referred to when you went back, and it was your initial kind of, you needed to raise more funds, and so you went offshore to seek that kind of funding. Is there a reason, or because the challenge seems to be that that group isn't looking for the funding here, or why go offshore instead of looking for it in New Zealand?
Well, part of it was everything we were producing is for export. So we wanted to find a partner that not only bought investment but also channels to market. So it's worked out really well. We've got sales agreements into the US and Japan and North Asia, but we don't have a dairy plant yet. But we've got the sales agreements. So that's the sort of thing we were looking for, partners that bought more than investment. And with the Japanese, they bought a lot more. Their values really aligned with ours.
That was the same for the Muraka example, right? So it's Vinamilk Vietnamese. It's a sales agreement that gets attached to the investment as well. So they've got a strategic investment. One more question, probably. Dr. Andy West down the back.
Just a comment and a question, really. I chair 3 Maori investment funds, and it took years generations to get the settlements. So when the cash comes in, the single most important thing, or assets, not just cash, is don't lose it. That's what you mustn't do. Don't lose it. On top of that, try and get asset growth and value and try and get yield. And the nature of those settlements is often assets such as forests or farms or property. And therefore the progression, and I fully support what Richard said, the progression that starts into value-based technical type investments comes from how can we leave more from a forest, or how can we leave more from an orchard or a farm, or what can we do with property? And
from your existing asset.
Classic was Muraka, but some of those funds have now got so big, Naitahu and Tainui of course, that just from a portfolio point of view, they really should be, in my opinion, a lot more aggressive into the tech sector. And I think it's a challenge for us, who are already investors in the tech sector, to encourage and bring them in there. Because they should be there by default. When you've got a balance sheet of 1.65 million or a balance sheet of 1.3, which is Tainui, where's...
Just from a risk weighting perspective.
Or 15% of your portfolio in tech companies. Yes, Tainui is in Waikato milking systems, etc. But how can it become a more active dynamic? And I think that's a real challenge, not just for all of us in this room, but for the Māori community, because when it's in there, it's going to get much stronger returns.
Yeah, and it's not just the benefits too. Of course, it's not just the return on the investment and the multiples that are available, particularly through that sector, but of course the learnings, the connections you have for younger people who want to participate in that type of stuff.
And employment too.
Yeah, and employment
in those countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things with our grouping is they often don't say, well, when we're going to get a return. They say, how many jobs are you going to generate? They're always hammering us with that. And we were lucky having Sedenco. This year they offered 20 internships into the Sedenco food processing plant. So we've got almost a ready workforce that we're able to bring back once we start our plant up. But we're always getting hammered with that. How many jobs? And are they going to be good quality jobs? And they're going to be long-term jobs. So it's that patient capital, it's financial and impact investing that Māori focus on.
Yeah, but as a last point, to your point around not all of the funds being tied up in Waikato Tainui, there's actually a movement that, and Rich and I have been talking a lot about it lately, is we're forming a more investment readiness group that it's not Tainui Ngāi Tahu, it's the Tier 2 iwi and high net worth Māori individuals that we're now collating and coming together to be able to act quickly on investments when they come to the table without having to go to the board and to the parent entities.
I've had a really good lesson on that recently. I pulled together 3 groups to buy a honey business, and each group got their lawyer involved, and it just dragged out.